And welcome to Human Trafficking 101. We are pleased to have you join us for today's session on Human Trafficking Awareness Day, sponsored by Zonta Club of Birmingham. To be considerate and respectful to everyone attending and presenting today, all attendees are muted. This will be an interactive session, so we have reserved time to answer all questions. You may, however, submit questions at any time during this session using the chat box. After this session, you will receive an important survey by email. We would appreciate your feedback. Should you experience any technical difficulties during this session, please post a message in the chat box. A recording of this session will be posted on the website within the next week. We want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today and also to acknowledge our media guests, Jess Chambers and Nick Patterson, both of Star Media and CBS 42, who are present for today's session, as well as candidate Carla V. Morton, running for Jefferson County Judge, Place 23, for helping Zonta get the word out about our trafficking event today. We appreciate you guys so much. We also want to acknowledge Zonta District 11, Governor Charlene Thomas, and Zonta District 11 Area 1 Representative Susan Shepard today. Thank each of you for your support for today's session. Before we introduce our speaker, please watch this short video about Zonta International and Zonta Club of Birmingham, the sponsors of this session. We hope that you will consider joining the club to help us continue to fight to end violence against women and gender-based violence. Thank you for your time.
We're gonna skip the video and go back to.
Oh, okay.
So, give me just a minute.
Okay.
Good morning. At this time, I am pleased to introduce to you our guest speaker for today, Amy Wager. In 2011, Amy began her fight against sex trafficking by creating awareness efforts and advocating for victims' rights to address the issues across Birmingham, Alabama metro area. Currently, she is a trainer for the Child Trafficking Solution Project, training law enforcement. She is also an advocate for Worthy 2, working with sex trafficking survivors. Amy is passionate about developing leaders in this field and frequently speaks at conferences and seminars throughout the Southeast. She also spends a lot of time developing trauma-informed training protocols and outreach programs to serve victims and survivors, as well as those who seek to purchase sex. The problem of sex trafficking. Amy grew up in the metro Birmingham area and has a BA in psychology from University of South Alabama. She also has a master's degree in human services, crisis response, and trauma counseling from Liberty University. Amy and her family reside here in Birmingham, Alabama. We are so excited to be able to hear from her today and have her to come and share in her own way. So, Amy, the floor is all yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Well, thank you so much to Zonta for having me here today and for inviting Child Trafficking Solutions Project. Like you heard in the long bio, I am really passionate about this. I'm coming up on my 11th year anniversary of being involved in this fight, and I'm really passionate about it. If you meet me for the first time, within about 5 or 10 minutes, I'll probably start going into my spiel. So it's fairly annoying, but I do try to tamper it down. So thank you. If you have questions, like they've talked about how to ask them online, and if you have questions, we can hold them to the end if you want to, and then we'll go forward. A couple of things I want to go over. There is some information that we've passed out if you're here in the room physically. Online, to our online guests, you will be getting this via email shortly. So let me just go over a couple of these things. The Blue campaign, since today is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, the Blue campaign is the Department of Homeland Security's anti-human trafficking branch, and so they're asking that for today everyone wear blue if you to support these efforts. So this is just a handout about that. There's also a pre-training test that can be taken in your packet, and just we're not going to share answers, and I'm not going to grade your test. It's just so that we know what, just so you can have an idea of what you already know about trafficking and not. There's also some information in here about Child Trafficking Solutions Project, and it kind of gives you some things that you maybe can do in your community. Unfortunately, we're here in Gardendale, and Gardendale mayor has already declared this a trafficking-free zone and done some of these things, but you can tell other people that you know about that. And then there's some more information in here about human trafficking, and then also about sexual exploitation of children. And then this last thing that's going to be in here is a speaker, what do you call it? It's basically my report card. So if you love this, like this, don't like this, I should be fired, just let us know on there and turn those in. We're always trying to improve ourselves and how we deliver the message. So if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, we'd love to hear about it. The last thing that I'm going to talk to you about or show you about that we've brought physically, but we can absolutely get it in the hands of those online, is this card. It fits in a wallet. It's from the Department of Homeland Security Blue campaign. It is a wallet-sized card, and on one side it talks about, it's the trafficking signs and indicators. So on one side it says human trafficking victims look like anyone, and then it lists common indicators to notice, to look for human trafficking, and on the back of it it says additional indicators. So basically this is a great little cheat sheet to keep in your wallet. We pass these out. If anybody needs them, let me know. I can get you a stack, but they're great for people to see and utilize. We give them to law enforcement when we speak and teach to them as well. So do you have the presentation ready to go?
I do.
Okay, you want to go ahead and start that PowerPoint?
I'll try to get their pre-test out in a minute.
Okay. I'm really excited about this. I've been looking forward to it ever since we spoke, so I'm really glad to see everybody. Before we kind of start, I wanted to find out kind of who we have in the room. Has anybody in here been a teacher in the past? Oh, wow. Like everybody. Great. Almost a lot of people. Online, I'm sorry I can't see you, but what about law enforcement? Anybody law enforcement? Okay, counseling services? Okay, great. And then just show of hands, who has had training on human trafficking before? So a couple of people. All right, so if I say something wrong, y'all go ahead and come on up here. You can correct it. We're good to go. This is a loving group, and hopefully there'll be some open communication. Okay, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Child Trafficking Solutions Project and why we're here. So years ago, the Child Trafficking Solutions Project was formed basically by Jan Bell and Carrie Hill out of Jefferson County Family Court. That's where we started, out of the Children's Policy Council. And so the effort was to create a multidisciplinary a multidisciplinary team, so an MDT comprised of victim services, comprised of law enforcement, family court, and just everybody who would need to be involved, DHR, everybody who would need to be involved if there was a child or a juvenile who had been discovered and identified as a trafficking survivor. And what does that need to look like? So we worked on that for several years, putting together a response protocol. And it's now being taught and spread throughout our state, and it works very well. I've been a part of it for several of the cases we've worked in. It's always worked very well. So we are a collaborative group of people, and coming from different backgrounds, but also when we work together, I want to say this is kind of my biggest thing, is that people will often say, oh, I can't participate in human trafficking because I'm a stay-at-home mom and I've got 2 small kids. I'd like to, but I don't know how to do it. Or, oh, I'm too young. Or, oh, I'm too old. Or, oh, I'm too big, too small, too whatever. And we begin to discount ourselves and the impact that we could make in our communities, in our families. And I will just tell you that our diversity is empowering. Whether it's an age diversity, whether it's a skin tone diversity, whether it's a background or a cultural, our diversity makes us much stronger. So please, if anyone has the heart to get involved in anti-trafficking efforts, don't discount yourself. There's always a place for people, because the experiences you have had and how you are made only adds to what we can do together. So, all right, without further ado, let's go to the next slide. Is there a way to click that? Okay. That's a picture of me with longer hair. Like she said, I've been involved in anti-sex trafficking. It's coming up on 11 years here in just a couple of weeks. And to be honest with you, when I got involved in talking about sex trafficking and combating this, this was not something I picked. This is not something I thought, this sounds like a great topic. I was actually at a women's conference, and I saw a lady speaking on the screen, and she was talking about how she was leading informational groups about human trafficking at her church. And I was like, great. And I know her. We're friends. She did like my premarital counseling several years back. So I knew her, but I thought, nah, I would never do that. Whatever that is, it doesn't sound interesting to me, or like I would be involved in that. I'm more of the, where can we go get the Manny and Petty ministry? Where is that at? Sign me up and let's go to the beach. So 3 months later, I was getting ready to go to church, and I don't know, when I'm fixing my hair, I get spoken to in the bathroom, and as I'm sitting there fixing my hair, it was laid on me really hard, kind of like a lightning bolt moment. Like if you ever ask for like a neon sign for a direction to go, boy, this was it. I started sobbing all of a sudden, and I was having a great day. Nobody was fighting or mad or anything. And I started sobbing like that about victims of sex trafficking, and I didn't even know what sex trafficking really was. Didn't make sense to me. And so I could not, and I'm not a crier. It's not my go-to emotion. My go-to emotion is probably like anger or something, so don't judge me, okay? And let's don't get mad. I'm just kidding. So I wept the whole way to church. I wept the whole way through church. My sweet husband's like, he's like, well, yeah, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, God, something's happened within me. And he was like, well, can you get it together? People are going to think we're fighting. And I was like, I'm sorry. And my husband's the sweetest person ever. And so when I got to church 3 times that morning, this is in 2010. This was not a talked about topic. It had just become illegal in the state of Alabama to traffic someone. And so 3 times that morning, the pastor mentioned victims of sex trafficking. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? So there was sort of a lightning bolt moment for me that I needed to research this. And I couldn't stop crying, and I left the service, and I was like, okay, if you will stop the tears, I will go and find out what that lady was talking about and what I need to get involved. And I go to my very first human trafficking meeting. She said, come and hear what we have to say. It's a 12-week thing. We meet once a week. And I will just tell you, just to be honest with you, it was 12 weeks of ugly crying, leaving with mascara pouring down my face. You would think I would learn not to put it on before I went to the meeting, but I didn't. And just completely devastated. And the very first meeting that I went to, so I was raised with military. My dad was in the military, and always raised like if something's going on that you don't agree with or is not right, you get involved. You stop that, right? So I kind of have been raised with an advocate heart. And so I go to this first meeting, and they equate human trafficking to slavery. And we all know slavery is wrong. It's a bad thing. It's horrific. But when they mentioned it was still going on today, and they related human trafficking and sex trafficking to slavery, I thought, so sex slaves, how can that be? How does that work? I was devastated, completely heartbroken, because in my mind, slavery is over. And oh boy, no, is it not? No, it's not. So a lot of education, a lot of understanding. During that course, I met my first 2 survivors that I ever met who had gone through sex trafficking. And just to tell you a little bit about me and how I'm made, at the very end of my very first meeting, this is at a church, okay? I go up to the lady and the leaders, and I said, hey, listen, okay? And I'm obviously a hot mess. I'm crying and mascara and all the things. And I said, I cannot sleep knowing this is happening. I've got a little girl at home. At the time, my oldest was 4, and we were in the process of adopting, and so I was like, I can't function. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get in my car. I'm going to get my gun. We're going to go downtown, and we're going to start handling this. We're going to shoot the bad guys. We're going to rescue the girls. We're going to pick everybody up. We're going to start loving on people. And she was like, maybe not. Please don't. So, and I was like, okay, but you just let me know when you're ready, and I'm down. We're going to go. And so while that was funny, I was very serious, and she was like, no, please don't. What we want to do is expand efforts and expand the kingdom we're trying to build, not contract it. So please don't do that. That's not healthy. So I learned a lot. The very first time I ever went out on the streets to go do something, so that was in 2010. The first time I ever went out on the streets was in 2017. So a lot of maturity, a lot of learning, a lot of trauma-informed care. No, you cannot go and shoot people. Highly recommend against that. Very bad. And so if you have that passion, if you are that person, and usually when I speak in the back of the room, those people will make eye contact. You know who you are, right? And you will make eye contact, and usually at the meeting, you'll be like, hey, talk to you. Okay, I get that. I identify with that. So what we need to do is make that into a constructive and helpful weapon. So if you are charged like that, great. Listen to what's going on today. Don't go out and do that and hit the streets. Let's go through some more training, okay? But anyway, just wanted to let you know that was the beginning of my story and how I got involved. And it's almost 11 years later, and I am probably more passionate and annoying about it today than I ever was in the very beginning. So that's me. Let's go ahead and go to the next.
You should do that now. You can do this. No, to me.
Oh, okay. So you're my clicker. I love this group. When you walk into a group of people and you start talking to them and you just vibe and you're like, these are my people. Okay, great. So we've talked a little bit about the Trafficking Solutions Project, and our mission here is to rescue and restore child victims of sex trafficking. And this is through developing that uniform response protocols that I mentioned. We do training, obviously, like this, and then strategic partnerships with law enforcement, with non-government organizations, with pretty much anybody who will come to the table together and work collaboratively in coalition fashion. We also want to prevent abuse, raise awareness, and increase safety. So that's a lot of what we do. We speak in schools a lot. Last night I spoke in the city of Mountain Brook, and they did a proclamation for a trafficking-free zone, which is great, just like Gardendale has done. So we are comprised, like I said, of a lot of different disciplines, from law enforcement, federal and local law enforcement, NGOs, child welfare agencies, family court, a lot of great people who are in this space. The ways that we do that is that we want to reduce and prevent child trafficking incidents and high-risk runaways. So we partner with family court, and like for example, here in Jefferson County, there's the Voices Docket. The Voices Docket is children who family court has identified as being high risk for being sex trafficked, or they think they have been. And so they go specially into this docket called the Voices Docket. And it's called the Voices Docket because one of the victim survivors who got help here in Jefferson County said, I feel like I finally have a voice. And so it's aptly named the Voices Docket. We provide continuum of survivor care. So I'm an advocate. I'm one of those people who, no, I don't take a gun on the street or anything, but I am one of those people who gets the call in the middle of the night from law enforcement or an organization, and they say, hey, we think we have a survivor. I know it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Can you send someone or come on out? Happy to do that. We also work with law enforcement, go on undercover sting operations. Some of them are 24 hours long through the night. Some of them are just a few hours long during the day. It doesn't matter. So as an advocate, I will go out and when they bring people in they think have been trafficked, I will talk to them, love them, trauma informed. So we do a lot of street outreach and things like that. So Child Trafficking Solutions Project partners with a lot of people who are doing that kind of stuff. The continuum of survivor care from street to stability. So what we can do as an advocate, as one of the, I'm the victims services coordinator for Child Trafficking Solutions Project. We can fly people all over the country, get them into a program, and we do. I've currently got people in programs down in South Florida and all the way up in Washington State, 10 minutes from the Canadian border. There are places that are specialized in caring for survivors of sex trafficking, and that's what we do. Although this is talking about labor and sex trafficking, that's just my background. And we also want to prosecute perpetrators. That's a really big thing, and so that's why we work with law enforcement a lot in this capacity. Our uniform response protocol, we've talked a little bit about this, the training that we do, and then the saturation, like what we're doing right now, helping people become aware of what's going on in your community, and then mobilizing you, hopefully, to go out and make some more awareness. Your city or local organization, local city can join by becoming a trafficking-free zone. It's a community-wide strategy to fight human trafficking, and it's sponsored by the U.S., which is the United States. Oops, sorry, I'm kicking things if you can't see me online. I've got my cowboy boots on today, and I'm kicking things. My bad. But the U.S. IATs, they're the human trafficking initiative that sponsors the trafficking-free zone. If your mayor decides to sign that, which here in Gardendale they have, and also in Birmingham they have as well, we are so proud to have amazing team members who go and work with the mayor's offices in the cities to set this up, but it has teeth behind it. It's not just a proclamation and a picture photo op. The trafficking-free zone requires that the city have all of its employees trained in human trafficking, and it provides free online computer-based training for the city employees. But for the first responders and law enforcement, we will provide in-person training. So as Child Trafficking Solutions Project, we have a post, which is the police officer school basically in Alabama. We have a post accredited training where they have to receive, annual training, so many hours, and they get 6.5 credit hours. So we do that. So we like to do that for our first responders in person, COVID pending. So that's a great idea. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I don't have a watch on. I don't know what time it is. 11:27. All right. I'm still kicking things. I'm sorry. I'm boxed in like a bull in a china shop.
Sorry.
So, what is human trafficking? If you take nothing away from today, take away the word vulnerability. But human trafficking is any services that someone's made to perform through force, fraud, or coercion. So, force, meaning I'm holding a gun to your head, or I've kidnapped you, I've got you handcuffed, that kind of stuff, but that's not everything. Force is by use of force or even the threat of violence against someone. Fraud is going to be something similar to, hey, we've got a job that you could do if you'll come to Atlanta or come to Birmingham. You're going to be a model. We see that a lot. You're going to be a model. We've got this job opportunity for you. When they get there, their ID is taken, all of their documents, things are taken, and then they're not allowed to leave, and then they wind up being put into trafficking. Coercion is probably one of the ones that we see the most. So the force, people often talk about, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but people talk about kidnapping and people in white vans. Y'all don't do that. That's probably people that work for a living and they're trying to make money and they're trying to find the house they're supposed to be at to install plumbing or something. Y'all leave those white vans alone. But really and truly, coercion is what we see the most. This is where a trafficker will make you think it's your idea that you be involved in this. We usually see this in a lover boy or a boyfriend scenario where someone has come alongside and they're pretending to be your boyfriend. It's a con. It can be a very long con. They will trick family members. They will trick your school. They will trick anybody that's in your circle of influence to get you to do what they want you to do. And they'll usually isolate you, move you away from your family, your school, your friends, things like that. And then we see this a lot with kids. Number one way to traffic a child is to already be in their life. Number two way is to give them a smartphone and let them get on the internet and have Facebook Messenger and Snapchat and Instagram. We'll talk about all that later on. But coercion is where we see someone pretending to be a loving, caring member of that person's life, and they coerce them into doing things. Let's go ahead and go to the next screen. What is sex trafficking? So this is specific to sex trafficking. This is any kind of sexual services that someone is made to perform. It doesn't have to be just sex. It can be, let's back it up one.
Back it up.
Yeah. It doesn't have, back it up two. I think we're going the wrong direction. Oops.
Wrong way.
There we go. So any sexual services that someone is made to perform through force, fraud, or coercion. Again, I want to really highlight the word vulnerability. Raise your hand in this room. Everybody in here is at least over the age of 30, I'm going to guess. So raise your hand, and those online identify. I'm hitting everything, I'm sorry. If you think you are vulnerable for being sex trafficked, raise your hand. Okay. All right. So think about that. Ask that question to yourself online. Raise your hand if you've got a child that you care about, wouldn't want to see harm come to. A spouse, a family member, an aunt, a mother, a cousin, a best friend, someone you don't want to see harm come to. Anyone in your life that you would love and care about. Okay, those are vulnerabilities, and those are often used to exploit people and put them in this situation. We had a situation in Alabama where we were on a sting operation, and they got this girl in, and she would not admit, she was an adult, she would not admit to being sex trafficked. She went on and on for several hours about how she was doing this on her own, doesn't have a pimp, and eventually she broke down and said that she has an infant, and the trafficker is holding that infant over in Mississippi, and he put the infant in a microwave and said, I'm going to turn this on if you don't do what I tell you to, and save all the money and bring it back to me or wire it to me or whatever. So that her love for her child is a vulnerability. So are we vulnerable for being sex trafficked? Absolutely. Because if that happens to my child, I'll do whatever you tell me to. Okay, so let's move on. I'm forgetting to click. So why human trafficking? Why would someone have the audacity to think they can own another human being? That was the most offensive thing to me. How dare someone think they can possibly own another human being? It is big business. It's big business. So worldwide human trafficking is estimated to be over $150 billion a year. People are making $150 billion a year combined in human trafficking, and that's labor and sex trafficking and other types of trafficking too. If you do not have a soul and do not care about humans and consider them nothing more than just an item or a commodity to be traded, it is a very great business plan. It's very lucrative. Think about drugs. So human trafficking, the top 3 organized crimes in the world, most profitable, is human trafficking is in the top 3. Do y'all know the other 2? Drugs and the arms trade. Arms and weapons. So human trafficking has bumped up to the 2nd place and slowly rising up to the top. Why? Because if I sell you drugs, I got to go back and get more product. If I sell you a gun, I got to go back and get more product. If I sell you a person, I can sell that person over and over again 20, 30 times a day. And how do I keep that person doing that? I give them drugs. Or I scare them to death so that they're made to do that. So what is child sex trafficking? It's the recruitment. Now listen, this is a great definition. Recruitment, harboring, transporting for, provision of anyone under the age of 19. So in the state of Alabama, it's anyone under the age of 19. So 18 and under is considered a minor victim of sex trafficking. Federally, it's anyone under 18, so our state law is better than our federal law. Anyone who's doing those things with the purpose of some type of commercial sex act, it does not have to be sex, it could be webcams, it could be anything that's eliciting sex. It could be sexual acts in a backseat of a car. It could be online, it could be selling videos and pictures, those kinds of things. We see a lot, like right now, one of the big problems that we see in schools throughout Jefferson County and all over Alabama is the sexting. We see a lot of that. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But those can be sold, those pictures and videos that these sweet little 13 and 14-year-olds are given to their boyfriends and their girlfriends, they can be sold for profit pretty easily. So the term commercial sex act means any sex act given where something of value is given and exchanged. Okay, so it doesn't have to be money. What we see a lot of when we're dealing with juvenile and child cases here in Birmingham is survival sex. We have kids who are running away from home, and they're training They're trading housing in a hotel, drugs, food, clothes, shoes. Okay, my oldest is 14. I didn't know about the shoe thing. I didn't know that Nike Air Force Ones was a thing, and so I have learned. I am woke now on the shoes. Okay, this year I had to buy my first pair of those, and we have a lot of kids who that's really important to them. We did a speaking presentation for all the kids with the Birmingham Housing Authority, and we got all of them ages 8 to 18, and we were talking to these girls and pouring into them, and they all have on, like, a lot of them have on the nice shoes, the Air Force Ones, and we talk to them about it. We get very real with these kids, and those are important things. It's a status symbol, and you can't knock that. And so they will do a lot to get those. So that's very important. All right, let's roll on.
Uh-oh. Oh, I just clicked on. Let's see. Where were we?
All right, go one more. There we go. So national trafficking statistics. 44% of victims report that they were never offered help during their captivity or while they were in this life. Less than 1% of victims are ever reported. Less than 1%. And then 15% of law enforcement nationwide have had human trafficking training. I believe that number hopefully is higher or going higher, because in the state of Alabama we've done a lot of work. There's been a lot that's been done in the last 5 to 10 years to advance training for law enforcement. So who's vulnerable? Who's being trafficked? Runaways. Do y'all know the difference between a runaway kid and a throwaway kid? I hate those terms. A runaway kid is someone who's run away from home and someone's out looking for them. A throwaway, they've left home, they're doing their own thing, and no one's out looking for them. That's the difference. Their trauma, their hurt, their pain, that's all there. I cannot tell you how many cases. We've worked 3 juvenile trafficking cases here in the Birmingham and Montgomery area in the last couple of weeks. And these kids were all running away. DHR system. Also the LGBTQ community, they're already a very marginalized population. And so all of these, this is not just children, but this is adults too. But think about the children who have got stuff going on at home. Y'all remember what it was like to be 14, 15, 16, 17? I'm going through that right now with my oldest. Y'all, every day is the most drama-filled day, and they're going through a lot. Remember the social structure and trying to gain who you're friends with, and it changes because then classes change, and Mean Girls. It's a mess. So they're already going to feel that emotional vulnerability. So just imagine also being part of the LGBTQ community who might be vulnerable. We need to love on everybody. All these kids need love and mentorship. Displaced or homeless people, we see that a lot. They're doing survival sex like we talked about. Latchkey kids who are coming home, nobody's watching. Physical or sexual abuse victims. I've been doing this 11 years. I have never worked with a sex trafficking survivor who did not also have sex abuse as a child. We'll talk about ACEs here in a minute. Basically, anyone can be a victim.
Could I get you to go back to the slide before? I just want to get the percentages. Could I?
I can give it to you. It can be emailed out, but let's move along because we got a lot of slides to go through. Sorry. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. So where does trafficking occur? Not in my city, not in my state. No, that's what I thought. Boy, was I wrong. Large sporting events. I'm not calling out men, but by and large, men are the largest portion of purchasers of sex. That does not mean women don't do it too. Y'all saw that Ghislaine Maxwell was just convicted of sex trafficking. So that was a big hooray. But anywhere that large gatherings of men will be, large sporting events. What happened last night? The game, the national championship football. We had people that were boots on the ground. They're doing sex trafficking outreach there because there's a large gathering of people. Super Bowl, Olympics, World Games. We've got World Games coming up here to Birmingham soon. So large sporting events, natural disasters. When I got married in 2005. And Hurricane Katrina hit in a couple months before I got married. And one of my best friends who was in my wedding lived in Mobile. That's where I went to college. And she said, Amy, I can't come up for any of your events because we're down here doing efforts down here in the poor fishing and shrimp communities down here in Bayou La Battery and in Mississippi and all these places that just got devastated by Hurricane Katrina. She said, she speaks Vietnamese, and she said, I'm down here talking to people in Vietnamese, and she said, you wouldn't believe it. Bad people are coming in, and they're offering to take their kids and go put them in schools and take care of them, and we're having to go down there and communicate and translate to them and say, don't do that. So tornadoes, these all create vulnerable situations where people have nothing and they have to survive. Anywhere kids hang out, malls. I don't know where kids hang out these days. Malls, and that's where it was when I was a kid. Yeah, they hang out at church. Anywhere that kids hang out, you're going to see that. I can think, I'm like, so many examples are going through my head, like a Rolodex of kids being trafficked, or picking up a trafficker at a mall, having to do sex things at a mall to buy a pair of shoes or something they wanted. Schools. I cannot tell you. I have a superintendent of the school where my kids go to. Their child's about to go somewhere and go on a trip over to Paris, and she's like, I'm so worried about sex trafficking. And I said, I would be more worried about sex trafficking happening in your school than I would anywhere else, because I've worked 3 child sex trafficking cases from the school that my kid attends. So I would be more worried about that than I would be your kid going to France for a couple weeks. So schools. We actually have traffickers that will enroll children in schools with the intent to recruit other kids to come into this life. That is a fact, and that happens right here in this area. Online. We all know that. Online is just full of predators. Anywhere, trafficking can occur anywhere. It happens in the shady and kind of rundown hotels. It happens in the nicest of the nicest hotels. It happens in homes. We see a lot of that all over the place. Potential indicators of labor trafficking. We talk a lot about sex trafficking, but listen, labor trafficking ruins people's lives. Labor trafficking is what built this country. It's the slavery that built this country from the Atlantic slave trade. So it is, and if you think people are not put on auction blocks just like they were back then and auctioned off today, they absolutely are. There was an undercover, I think it was CNN, someone went into not Ethiopia, not Egypt. It's up there on the northern part of Africa. They went in undercover and they filmed an auction where they were putting African slaves up on the block, and they were auctioning them off. It has been done since the beginning of time, and I was like, you've got to be kidding. So let's talk about labor trafficking. I've worked several of these cases. They're forced to live at their workplace, like illicit massage parlors and things like that. Forced to live at the workplace, forced to live with their employer. 10 and 15 people living in a house, and they're only transported by a van, one direction over there and one direction back. They make little to no money. They are coerced. There's often a lot of violence involved in it. We'll talk about some specific cases of that later on. Threats and fear of false hope. They're unpaid or underpaid. Unable to choose their residence. They don't have their documentation. Most of our sex trafficking survivors and labor trafficking survivors do not have their passports. They don't have their driver's license because it gets taken from them. So they're not in control of their money. They're recruited in with false promises and things like that. Let's go to the next slide. Click. Let's keep going.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. So we talked about how it's big business. I'm not sure if you can see that, but the local Department of Homeland Security estimates that the commercial, I'm not saying sex trafficking, the commercial sex industry in the Birmingham metro area is about $110 million a year. We as Birmingham Metro are spending about $110 million a year on commercial sex. That could be your strip clubs, that's sex trafficking, a lot of that stuff sold on. That's a conservative estimate, and that's only what we can track. It does not include 2 things. It does not include child sex trafficking, and it does not include illicit massage parlors, of which in the Birmingham area there are anywhere between 22, 26 of those, depending on who's been shut down that week. And Illicit massage parlors make anywhere upwards of $800,000 to over $1 million a year. So now think about it. So I'm giving you the 110 million. That's a conservative estimate. Okay, places Atlanta. I don't remember the exact number, but it's between 260 and 280 million a year. So it's a very, very lucrative business. We are perfectly positioned here in the state of Alabama in the Birmingham area for traffickers to travel to travel on circuits, to get to Atlanta, to get to the beach, the I-10 corridor, down into Florida. That's sex tourism, where you're going to go to the beach and you line up some stuff before you get down there. That's a really profitable business. But our interstate system has us perfectly set up. You can traffic someone from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham and Montgomery, and then head on up 85 to Atlanta and start your circle back all over again. This is a heat map. It's kind of an older heat map, but it shows basically the areas in Birmingham where it's been reported. This is not just where it's happening. This is where calls have come into Polaris Project to say, we suspect trafficking is happening here in this area. And I can look at all the little bitty areas on that map in between of all the small towns and tell you that I have worked cases in most of those places where you cannot see it lit up on that map. So the rural communities are by far not exempt. In this picture, I want you to kind of tell me, who is the trafficker? Who do you think is the trafficker in this picture?
The old guy.
The old guy?
Everybody.
All of them?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them. All of them have been arrested for sex trafficking. Trafficking as far as traffickers and as far as victim survivors, and also as far as people who purchase it. Knows no age, no bounds of color, no socioeconomic status. We have gotten people out of Mountain Brook who have been trafficked, who are about 50 years old. We've gotten the youngest victim that I personally know hadn't had their first birthday yet.
Oh, my.
They don't usually survive that.
Oh, my.
So, yeah, it knows no age bounds or anything like that. Let's go ahead and move on. So what we do is we listen for terminology. These are words. Some of them are going to be offensive. It just is what it is. We call a spade here. In the life, that means someone who is involved in the life or of sex trafficking or human trafficking. A lot of these pertain to sex trafficking. A stable, that is considered, like if you have all your horses in a stable, those are your horses. That's kind of how they refer to it as well. These are street terms. That's how the pimp would refer to it, my stable. That means all 3 or 4 of his people that he's got working for him. Oh, let me pause and say this too. You will commonly hear me refer to traffickers as men. Please do not think that they are all men. That's just a common thing. You will also hear me refer to victims as female. That is not, like I said, all genders. And so all genders across all areas of trafficking. So I'm just giving examples, but please understand it's widespread. You'll also hear the circuit. When we talked about different cities to travel to, that's where they travel. That's the circuit where they work. Daddy is what we're going to call our pimp. I've heard him called my brother, my uncle, all these things, but refer to them as daddy. And a wifey or a wife-in-law. First time I heard this term, I was in Birmingham, at the jail down in Birmingham, talking to a victim, and she was talking about, I said, who's the girl over there in the other room? And she said, that's my wife-in-law. And I was like, you what? She said, my wife-in-law. She started laughing at me because I didn't know what she was talking about. She said, like, my wifey, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just pretended like I knew what she was talking about. I went outside and I started looking up on Urban Dictionary. So those are going to be, like, if a pimp has, or a trafficker has, like, 3 people that he's trafficking, those 3 people are each other's wifey or wife-in-laws. Okay? So kind of think like, yeah. So a quota of a lot of things you want to see on this page. Notice that word quota. They have a certain amount that they have to hit every day. Okay? If they don't, they get beaten. They get starved to death or starved. They get isolated. They get kicked out. We were in the streets of Birmingham. It was about 11:30 at night in February a couple years ago. And there was a girl that we see often and know well. We have loved her, clothed her, fed her, helped her. She knows we love her. And I think it was about 11:30 at night. It was like 20 degrees outside. It was freezing, and we had a van full of coats and things. And we see her, and we go up, and we're like, "Hey, so and so, what are you doing out here?" And she was on a concrete. This is on First Avenue North. She was on a concrete bench, freezing to death. She didn't have on a heavy coat. She had on like a little cardigan type thing and a shirt. And we were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And she was real scared, like, He'll see you if you come up and talk to me. But she was like, "I'm cold and I'm hungry, but I can't leave. And when she sat up, we saw that she had a black eye. She'd been beaten. And we asked her what happened. And she made him mad because she didn't hit her quota that day. So she was forced to not have food. She had to sleep outside. She didn't have a coat. It was freezing. We clothed her. We fed her. We said, "Come with us. Come get in the van. We will take you. You don't ever have to be this life again. Come on. Well, you know us at this point." She said, No, but I will take some food. So we went to McDonald's, got her food. She wouldn't come in the van because she was scared to death of him. So that quote is very important to them. A Romeo pimp, that's going to be someone who, like we talked about, romances a person into working for them. A CEO pimp or a business pimp, that's someone who they're like, "Hey, you're already in this life. Look, we could make some money together. This is a good business deal. You give me a little bit, I'll set up some of your dates." That's a CEO or a business pimp. And then we've got the gorilla pimp. This is the pimp or trafficker. This person uses force, violence, or even threat of violence to do that. We were on the streets late one night down in Birmingham doing outreach. We go to all the bad hotels and we pass out food, and we love people and hug people and give out roses and develop relationships there. And we watched a guy beat the mess out of a girl, beat her down to the ground. And it was horrific. And y'all know me. Remember the first night I got involved in this? I was ready to go. I was sitting up in the front. I reached for my door handle. I was ready to run out and go get into this. And our security guard grabs my shoulder and sits me back down the seat from behind. And he says, "If you go out there, he will hurt you, and he will hurt her because she's she's drawing attention by him beating her." And he was right. He was 100% right. That's why we work together with groups and teams. A John or a Jane, those are people that we call, those are the people that are purchasing sex, male and females. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
What's the bottom bitch?
I'm sorry, the bottom bitch. So that's a great one too. Thank you for asking. The bottom bitch is the term that's used for basically, that's the person that's been with the pimp the longest, most trusted, most mentally
Keep the girls in line.
beaten down, keeps the girls in line. Yeah, I've been working with this one bottom girl. I love her to pieces now, but she helped him traffic so many people, juveniles and adults. And it wasn't because she was a mean person. He turned her into that because she was his victim first. And so he would beat the mess out of her in order to, and do it in front of the girls and demean her and do that in order for them to obey and do whatever she told them to, because she would do that to them if they didn't do what she was supposed to do, handling the money and all that kind of stuff, arranging the dates. So what are the signs that when we're talking about children? Truancy, kids not showing up to class. Substance abuse, you're going to see a lot of that. Tattoos and brandings. Why do kids, every time I see a kid or somebody, I always ask about somebody's tattoos. How old were you when you got it? Especially when we're working with juveniles. Where'd you get that tattoo? Because they're not old enough to sign a document to get that. DHR custody or involvement. That's a red flag. History of sexual and physical abuse. I've already talked about that. I've never worked with a victim or survivor who did not have sexual abuse in their history. And let's touch on that stat real quick. There is, by age 18, 1 in 4 females are sexually assaulted or have some sort of unwarranted sexual contact. 1 in 4. Now look how many females are in this room. Think about how many females are in your family. 1 in 4. I think that statistic is off. I think it's higher than that, to be honest with you. For men, it's 1 in 6. Now think about all the men you know. Go to a football game. Look at all the men that are in that stadium. 1 in 6 has had sexual assault by the time they hit age 18. So do we have a problem? And any kids that are reporting to have an older boyfriend or somebody that they hang out with. We talked about the boyfriend. These are real examples of tattoos and brandings that we've seen. Pimps will mark their victims. They can actually get more money if they don't mark their victims because that person is deemed a little bit more pure. But they will brand and mark their people. You see the crown there, that establishes loyalty, and it'll be a crown with the pimp's initials on them. I saw a picture. I saw a girl one night that we were dealing with in Birmingham, and she had a name tattooed on her. The letters were about this tall. It was a long name. It had nine letters in the name, and it started on the top of her arm, and it went all the way across her chest. I said, "Whose name is that? That's not your name." She said, "That's my friend." And it was her trafficker. He put his name all over her. We see them get tattooed on their neck a lot. But if you see the middle tattoo that you're looking at, it says "pay up," and it has a dollar sign. We see a lot of these tattoos that have people's names, people's initials. You see them we've seen them on the inside of lips. There's a growing trend to use invisible tattoo ink that can only be seen with the black light. A blue light, black light. One of those lights. There was in a case, and they showed the black light on it, and it said "property of," and then the person's name. Let's go ahead and click on through. I'll tell you this, the worst tattoo I ever saw, which I have a picture of, and I do not show it in normal settings, only with law enforcement and medical providers, it was a pimp who catered to pedophiles, and it was a very ornate color picture of a baby screaming and gripping sheets, and it was tattooed on a woman's lower half, starting below her navel, and the anatomy with the baby lined up with the anatomy of the female, and that's what he catered to. Now that person has that tattoo on them the rest of their life, unless we get services to get that taken off. And every time our survivors look in the mirror and they see somebody else's name on them, they are reminded, "I'm property," until we get involved and come in like a wrecking ball, and we go get those tattoos removed by dermatologists that are willing to work with us. Anyway, I get passionate about that. So let's talk about the myths of human trafficking. Whoa, go back. All victims are forced to do acts against their will. No. Remember we talked about coercion? That's where they trick them into doing things. And I have very, 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 very rarely will you ever get in front of a victim survivor, juvenile or adult, and they say, "Oh yes, I'm being trafficked." It doesn't work like that. When I first got into this, I was like, I just want to go love on victims. That's what I want to do. But when you show up, I have learned, when you show up, they are not excited to see you. You're cutting them out of their money. You're cutting them out of their routine life. They're used to that trauma. They don't know you. They don't trust you. And they do not want you to love on them. Go away. And so when you show up to love on them, they're going to tell you, "Look, let me go. Nobody's forcing me to do this." And they have scripts that they're taught to rehearse and things they're taught to say. So they are being made to do it by force, fraud, or coercion. Victim does not have a choice. That's a myth. They have some choices in some of the things that they do, but they don't have a choice to work for that person and provide that person with money and hit that quota. They are sometimes set free to go out and do their day, whatever they're going to do. Kids that go to school, kids that are doing homework in one room, or supposed to be doing homework in one room while mom's in the kitchen cooking spaghetti, and that kid they sent a text one time, a picture of them, and now somebody's got control over them because they say, "If you don't do what I tell you to and send me more pictures or videos, I'm going to put this on Facebook. Your pastor's going to know, your mom's going to know, your friends at school are going to know." And that's not an idle threat. I have worked that case with this child where she got raped by two guys simultaneously. It was videoed. She had no idea. And the guy said, "If you don't start doing what I tell you to, everybody's going to see this video." It was a small rural town in Alabama, out in the country. And sure enough, a couple months later, all the kids were coming up to her school going, "Hey, I saw that video of you." You know how that got uncovered? The school asked us to come in and talk with the kids and do a presentation, and she disclosed after the presentation was over. So we got work to do. All right, let's go back to this. If the victim consents, it voids the crime. No, it does not. No, it does not. Any child under the age, any person under age 19 in the state of Alabama, so 18 is included and under in our state law, if they are caught selling sex services, they are automatically considered a victim of child sex trafficking and need services. Automatically. I don't care what has happened. They do not need to be arrested for that. We have a safe harbor law that's a very good law that protects them from that. The other myth is that the victim's going to ask for help, because I wanted to go love on victims. And I figured when I show up on the scene, they're going to come run to me, and I'm going to hug them, and they're going to hug me, and they're going to be, "Oh, thank you, you're here." I have been cussed out, called every name in the book, spit at, swung at, kicked at. They are not normally happy to see you. They will not ask for help. They are scared to death. And remember, the girl that we had in Tuscaloosa whose baby was threatened, put in a microwave, she didn't want the help because she wanted to hurry up and do what she had to do to save her baby's life and get back. So they don't always ask for help. Let's click and go to the next slide.
Yeah, this is not to text quick. Okay. There we go.
Y'all okay? Am I boring y'all to death? Is everybody asleep yet? Okay. So why doesn't this person leave? And I'll just boil it down to manipulation. Manipulation. They're afraid to leave. They will often, that girl whose baby was put in the microwave, her grandmother lived next door to the pimp, and he threatened to kill the grandmother. That is not an idle threat. Isolating her with her system, her support system, her friends, her school, her parents. Hey, look, your parents are mean to you. They won't let you come hang out with me. Look, just come, let's build a life together. Let's build a life, you and me against the world. Come out here, I'm going to take care of you. They buy them gifts. They take them out to eat. They coerce them into coming along with them. And then the kids or the adults, whoever they are, they feel guilty. They feel ashamed. And the traffickers will tell them, nobody's going to want you now. You're soiled goods. You've got me. I want you. They will also force them to commit crimes. We have traffickers who force people to commit crimes and do drugs, and they know to take a rap for their trafficker. Even if it's the trafficker that's committed the crime or has the drugs or whatever, all they know is protect daddy. Protect him, protect him, protect him. He sustains your life, and if something happens to him, your life is over. That's what they've been told. So he will force them to commit a crime. Sometimes it's something like petty theft. So when we talk to law enforcement, I'm like, if you've got someone stealing a package of crackers and some hygiene products from Walmart, ask them why. Dig a little deeper. Find out why. Because we have victims that do that, and their traffickers force them to do it. They get caught. They take a charge. Trafficker wants to have that charge on them. They oftentimes partner with bail bondsmen. We have we're working when it hits, in a few months, it'll be the biggest human trafficking case in the state of Alabama. And we've placed all the victims. Most of them, all of them have gotten out and are doing fabulous. But that guy has bail bondsmen on his payroll, and he works with them because they have access to the court system, and they can go in and see where people are, and they'll hold that over their head. So he likes them to catch a charge. They move them from city to city, place to place. They take all their money. They're completely dependent on them. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We've talked about them threatened family and things like that. They make them doubt their capability and their sanity, and they gaslight them. Y'all know what gaslighting is? When someone's trying to make you feel better. Like, gaslighting is where I say, if you kicked me and it hurt, and I go, oh my gosh, that hurt so bad. Well, why did you make me kick you? Like, I didn't want that to happen. You know what I mean? They flip the script. They flip the script. They keep them sleep deprived. Boy, I know girls that have been up for 2 and 3 days at a time. By the time they get in my hands, by the time they feel safe and I put them in my car and we're traveling a couple hours somewhere, they fall asleep, and I mean hard. I was like, I think this girl's dead. You have to kind of shake them, hey baby, and they come up swinging because PTSD, they're ready to hit me. They think they don't know who I am. And then I have to sit there and calm them down and talk to them because they fall into deep sleep because they've been sleep deprived. Convincing her that he deserves another chance, just like domestic abuse. Blaming it on stress, blaming it on lack of money, blaming it on everything under the sun but the person who's actually doing it. Federal human trafficking laws. So in 2000, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act was signed. It has been re-upped every year since then because people like us who find out about this and learn about it are annoying, and we pester the government to do it. Sex trafficking. These are just some of the laws that talk about it, and then it talks about the labor services too. There's other types of trafficking too. There's organ trafficking. Organ trafficking. That's here in the U.S. too. That's not just in faraway places. There's a bunch of different things. There's child soldiering. I actually know of met a lady in Florida when I was down there for something. She was telling me she was from somewhere in middle America, one of those countries, and her husband was a good guy working for the government, for their military, and he would not go and work for this like guerrilla warfare group. And they showed up at her apartment one day, and her landlord called her and said, "Hey, there's some bad guys coming up to your apartment." She took her son and hid him inside the dishwasher and kind of almost closed it up. And then they couldn't find him, and then they left. And they were going to make her child work for them since her husband wouldn't. Let's go ahead and move on to the next. So there's a lot of different types of trafficking. The state human trafficking laws, we have good laws. It was not illegal to do human trafficking until 2010. 2010. We were one of the last states, but that helped us because we looked at what everybody had done wrong, and we fixed it, and we have some good laws. There's still some things that need to change, but we do have that. It is a Class A felony, and like I said, our state law is better than our federal law because it's anyone under 19, which includes the age of 18. Legal definitions to note about sexual contact, and we've highlighted and kind of bolded the important parts. Anyone known touching for the purpose of sexual arousal gratification on any intimate parts of the clothing. Intimate parts or the clothing covering those intimate parts. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just getting someone naked. And then sexually explicit performances. Y'all can guess what that is. Photographs, videos, recorded, strip shows, things like that. The Human Trafficking Safe Harbor Act I just mentioned. Any sexually exploited child may not be adjudicated. We have had to teach that a good bit. They cannot be charged with prostitution. How many of you have ever heard the term child prostitute? There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Well, it's just 16, 17-year-old. They're just loose. That's just what they do. Nope. There's trauma that's caused that child to be in that situation. There's a vulnerability. Something's happened to this baby. So let's look at them like a victim rather than a person with loose morals, and let's help them rather than put them in a system that's only going to make it worse. That's right. Child trafficking cases. These are case studies in Alabama. These are real things. I can tell you stuff all day long, but we're going to go through the ones that are here in this. This just happened a few years ago. So the Gunnersville soccer coach, this guy on the left, I forget his name, David Jacob Barrow. He was a beloved, what? Oh, nice. David Jacob Barrow was a beloved soccer coach. Everybody in the community loved him. The lady in the other picture was Christian Griffin. She had a child, a 10-year-old daughter, and she had a drug problem. Well, Coach Barrow, huh?
10-year-old, the mother had.
The mother has a 10-year-old daughter, and Coach Barrow invited the child and the mother over to the house, and he was supplying the mom with drugs. And then he started taking pictures of the child for a little bit more while mom was getting high at the house, and now I'm not even talking about naked pictures. Then he progressed it from pretty pictures to sensual pictures to taking some clothes off. Then he had that child go and recruit another girl and said, "Hey, why don't you get any friends? You want to bring your friends over here?" Brought another child over there, and that happened to that child, and that child went home and told her family. Then there was an investigation. And do you know that when they went to arrest this soccer coach at the soccer field during a game, the community was in uproar. He is innocent. He would never do that. We love him. We know this. There was picketing. There was all kinds of stuff that was going on. He was indicted on 3 counts of human trafficking, 3 counts of sexual abuse with a child under 12, and 1 count of sodomy. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We have a major labor trafficking problem here in this state. A lot of it's up in North Alabama. I've seen it in like Jasper, but we've got it everywhere. Chicken plants are, I'm not knocking them, but they do tend to have a good bit of this. This was a live case, or a real case out of Decatur, Alabama, where 12 minor children between the ages of 13 and 18 were illegally employed in a meat cutting area of the plant. This happens all the time, and it's happening right now in the state of Alabama. The children were routinely denied rest and meal breaks after 5 continuous hours of work. They had forged documents and all that kind of stuff. This case breaks my heart. This is Irma. She was a victim of labor trafficking, and her company, she spoke out and said what happened. She was a 14-year-old Guatemalan girl. And Gemstone Company was brought down for labor trafficking, and they were fined $64,000 for these violations. Irma went missing and has not been recovered. What does that say to an immigrant population that's being trafficked? What does it say? Keep your mouth shut, or we'll kill you. Bobby Joe Spiegel had a child. He had he drugged his 17-year-old daughter with a laced drink, delivered her to a man named Kevin that he met in prison in exchange for drugs. So he was trading his child for drugs. That is a very common thing to have parents trade their children for drugs. The child woke up during the sexual assault and reported it. I think that case is still pending, but it will be human trafficking. And then, this one was not too long ago, this Atmore grandmother traded her granddaughter to her 87-year-old boyfriend for sex. So, what happens to cause some of that vulnerability that we've talked about? If you've ever heard, who's heard the term ACEs? Adverse childhood experiences is what that is. The greater the number of these ACEs, or these adverse childhood experiences, the greater the risk factor that someone becomes for being put into this when they encounter a predator. So these are going to be things like physical abuse and sexual abuse. We've talked about that. That is a major predisposing factor. Divorce, incarcerated loved ones, so mama or daddy's in jail. Emotional neglect and physical neglect, drug and alcohol abuse in the home, death of a parent or a caregiver, violence in the household. Household members that have illness or sick, because that makes them vulnerable and they want to provide and help. I have a girl that I've worked with. She's an adult now, but as a child, her mother manipulated her and made her start working and doing prostitution, but it was trafficking, at the age of 12 to provide her with her drug habit. And she eventually sold her to the pimp to keep her drug habit going. Bullying, natural disasters. You imagine how I've seen kids who've come out of tornadoes when we've had them come through here and worked with them, and they are completely traumatized. They don't want to go to if it starts raining, they freak out. So just imagine natural disasters and things that happen there. You can read more about that too, but that's pretty fascinating what it does. There's a video here that talks about online sextortion. We're going to pass by that because we're running out of time, and I yap a lot. But that link will be sent out to you. It's in the presentation if you want to watch it. Basically, it talks about how quickly a kid will snap a picture and send it to a boyfriend because they're in love. Well, 3 weeks later, they're going to be in love with somebody else. Okay? But they snap that picture, they send it to someone. Does that picture say where they sent it? No. No, it doesn't. Over 91% of the pictures of the pictures taken and sent by kids wind up online at some point. So where are these images coming from? 1 in 5 indecent images of children shared online were taken by the children themselves. When we go in schools and talk to schools, we have to tell your kids, if you take a picture of yourself without clothes on, you have committed a felony, that you have just produced child pornography. And they do not know that. People think, oh, my kid would never do that. Oh my gosh. And they think, oh, my kid would know that that's illegal. No, they don't. If we don't go talk to them and tell them, they do not know. If they send that picture to someone, there are now 2 additional felonies. That's distribution of child pornography, and now they've caused somebody else to have a felony because they're harboring child pornography on their device. So if it's a video, it's many more counts of felonies. Can a 14-year-old be sent to big person prison for child pornography? Yes. The judge has the option, not saying they will, but they have the option to send that 14-year-old who has been getting all these naked pictures from someone and it's on their device. That person can go to big person adult prison, and that is not good. It doesn't look good on a resume for college. You get registered as a sex offender. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. These are social media emojis that you will see or hear commonly. There's so many of them. There's so many of these things online to look at, but things that you'll see being texted, MOB and MOE, those are gang. Those refer to gangs, member of different type of gang members. Let's see. The Crown, that talks about loyalty. Snapchat, a lot of kids and adults advertise their sex services on Snapchat. It is absolutely crazy. So the money, we see a lot of these things. Let's go ahead and go to the next one because I want to make sure I get through all these other ones. This is a picture of social media icons, okay? I'm looking through this and I can tell you that every single one of these apps has been used to traffic children. The major apps that traffic children: Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and then there's a bunch of other ones. There's so many secret apps and ways to store apps inside of a secret folder. Like there's an app that looks like a calculator. It's a vault app. You ever heard the term vault app? So it looks like a calculator and it functions like one. I used to have it on my phone and I would show it to people. You pull up the calculator, it functions, it works. But if you hit your certain code, like decimal, whatever your code is, decimal, the page literally slides over, and then that's where all your naked pictures and stuff and videos have been stored that you've been sending to people. So if your kid has 2 calculator apps on their iPad or iPhone, they are not that interested in math, I swear to you. Look into that phone. Don't get me started on phone security. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. These are other apps that have been used to traffic children. So do you think that we need to monitor those devices? Absolutely. Most parents do not monitor their kids' devices. They will say that they will intend to, but unless you're using an app like Bark or something like that does it for you, which saves you literally hundreds of hours of trying to scour through your kid's phone, it's not going to be a complete system. Let's go to the next one.
Say BARK, B-A-R-K.
BARK. That's a good one. There's several different good ones. We've used Bark for both of our kids' devices. And it's very hypersensitive. It'll send us an alert to say, hey, your kid is talking about bullying, and it'll screenshot you the text conversation or the lyrics of the song or whatever it was that came across that phone, and it'll be like, oh, I slapped the table, and you're like, okay, thank God, it's not like legit bullying. It was just, it says slap, and so it flags it. So it's hypersensitive, which you want, because we have caught some things on there. My kids are not allowed to have social media, but my daughter has Instagram, and we share that account. There are some real restrictions. My poor kids, God bless them. I told you, my oldest daughter was 4 she was 3, about to turn 4 when I got into this. I've been training her to be a sex trafficking advocate since she was 4 years old. She is fully aware. She has heard me speak. She's like, oh my God, here my mom goes again. But she knows. And she knows. Because you got to tell these kids why before the what. You got to make it abundantly clear. Because I was a why kid. If you tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it and find out why not. So better to tell them the why. 78% of sextorted victims, sextortion. Let me cover this. Have y'all heard this term before? Just think of the word extortion. You're holding something over somebody's head, making them do something. Sextortion. So they're holding a sent video or picture or something that they videoed sexually over someone's head. This is a major problem. There have been so many cases out of the University of Alabama, and I'm not saying that it's not happening at other universities. I can guarantee you it is. I just know the law enforcement working it down there, faculty and staff at UA and sororities, and oh my gosh, the people involved in that was just insane. 80% of victims sextorted the same day as the first time they contacted that person. 5% of these victims have sexual contact, like actual contact with the victim. So it doesn't have to be physical. Let's move on. So we're going to talk about equipping parents and things like that. We've talked about Bark. If your kid watches the movie Taken, raise your hand if you've seen the movie Taken. Great movie, love it. Taken 1, 2, 3, Taken Goes to College, whatever. But let's talk about that. This is what Hollywood says trafficking is. And people are like, oh, trafficking victims is because they get kidnapped. No. Most children who are put into sex trafficking are not there because they got kidnapped. Because what's the first thing that happens when a kid gets kidnapped? An Amber Alert. All of our phones blow up no matter what time of the night it is, and we wake up hearing this awful noise, and there's an Amber Alert out. if I'm going to do crime, if I'm going to traffic a child, I don't want an Amber Alert. So I'm going to take the time to invest in a relationship with this child, with the child's parents, and groom that child and that family and whoever else so that when they go somewhere with me, it's not a flag. Okay? So that's what happens. We had a child that the trafficker even paid for tutoring classes for this child. Like, he groomed like the whole family, the teachers, the community, and everything. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Everybody online, y'all doing okay? Hope everybody's well there. So these are some examples from the news. An adult convinced a 15-year-old to send him nude photos by pretending to be in the modeling industry. He then threatened to distribute these photos unless she had sex with him. I've already talked to you about that. That happens here in Alabama, left and right. An adult manipulated teen boys into performing sex acts on a webcam and then threatened to publish these videos. It's kind of the same situation. We've already talked about that. Let's move on. Talking to our kids about safety. There are so many resources online, but so many parents don't even want to talk to their kids about sex, let alone improper sex stuff. So we are happy to do that for you. If you do not feel like that is in your court of abilities, no problem. Let's get together. Let's have a training, and we're happy to talk to them about it. Talking to our kids about online safety. There's a lot of information that's in here that talks about that. We've given you some resources, and everybody online, that has been emailed out to you as well. But when you're talking to these kids, these are some great questions to ask. Like, what does the content say about the kind of person that I am? Talk to them about that. Because when you're online, if you're posting on Facebook, which most kids today are not looking at Facebook, they're on Instagram and Snap and all these other things, they'll tell you, Facebook, my grandma has Facebook. But when you're talking to them, they're building an online resume of who they are, and they are projecting to the world who they are. So when you're talking to these kids, say, well, what does this project about who you are as a person? How could this, and then have them think, how could this impact future opportunities in your life? Such as college scholarships, jobs, acceptances to sororities or fraternities or whatever. Get them thinking futuristically. You have a future, so let's build into it, not detract from it already. Could this get me into trouble at school or with the law? We have a lot of kids who like to post things on their social media. Snapchat. The big thing with Snapchat is that I post it and then it disappears and it's gone. Is it really gone? No, it's not. Snapchat is based out of Canada. They actually have an entire department that is devoted to looking for CP, child pornography. And so there was a case in Tuscaloosa they were working where law enforcement got a call from Snapchat and they said, hey, we got an IP address. Looks like child pornography from your area down there in Tuscaloosa. Law enforcement had to go to the school, get the kid. Mom was brought up there. And the mom, of course, was like, well, my child would never do this. Well, of course, we know your child's perfect. And they slide the picture on the desk across to the child and the mother, and they say, child, do you recognize this? And he goes, and they pull up his phone, and sure enough, he had gotten a picture on Snap, or taken a picture, and then sent it on to other people, and he thought it disappeared, and there was no trace of the crime. Trust me when I say, if it's online, if it's shared, there's traces of it. And so there are also, all right, let's go on to the next one. God, I could preach all day about that. I'm going to try not to preach today. Okay, so how does it happen? How do we talk to our kids about and say, well, look, this is how it happened. People will come along and try to agree with you. They will flatter you. They'll send you gifts like cell phones. Remember, my girl went to Tuscaloosa, or she was in a rural city. She went somewhere being promised a cell phone for her birthday, and then she got raped by two men simultaneously. It was videoed. She did not know about it, and then it got sent around to all her kids at school. That's how she got lured into that. They'll promise bus tickets, vacations, shoes, clothes, get your hair done, get your nails done. All these things that are important to kids that we may go, well, that's no big deal. They will blackmail you. Share. So these are just things for you to talk about to your kids, and you'll all get a copy of this. So these are things you can look at. Let's go to the next one. And then talk to them and say, what if someone sends you an inappropriate request? What do you do? When we talk to kids, At the end of the thing, you would not believe how many little boys are going, what if you got something and you didn't ask for it? And I'm like, well, that's okay. You bring that phone up to law enforcement, and your school resource officer too. You bring it up to them, and they want to see it. You're not going to be in trouble. Just let us know, little Johnny, so how we can get that off the phone. We have a lot of schools who are like, oh, this is bad. Look, you need to stop doing this, and they give the phone back to the kid. What did that school just commit? Felony child porn distribution. They just gave a phone that's got naked images of a child back to a child. Oh my Lord. And they don't realize they just committed a felony, so we need to be talking to our educators. So these are things to look at on here and ways to talk to your kids about inappropriate requests. This is a fabulous video. We've run out of time because I've been blabbing too much, but it's a great video that basically shows how quickly pictures and things go flying around. Online safety and sexting. We've already covered a good bit of this, but if you take a revealing image of yourself on your phone and you lose that phone, do you think somebody's going to figure out how to get into that phone? They can. They can. Your kids can probably do it more than you can. My kids can probably do it better than I can. But they can figure out how to hack into that phone, and then they own all the copyright. They own all the stuff that's on there. All the pictures and the videos and things that there's access to in there, so be very careful about that.
So what if you have a phone and the phone is white and you sell it to somebody else? They can still get into it.
People can't hear.
People can't hear. Okay. Do you want to wait till questions at the end? Okay, we'll wait till questions at the end. I'm sorry, but please remember that. That's a great question. So talk to them about how you could get in trouble with the school. There's a lot of bullying that happens, and sex is brought into that too. So we had a student in a school here in Alabama, not far away, that they had gotten a video of a guy and girl at that school having sex together. That student walked into the lunchroom. iPhones have AirDrop. Everybody know what that is? AirDrop, where you can go in and you can AirDrop it and send it to a bunch of people. It got shared. That video got sent to 264 kids in the lunchroom that day. So law enforcement was like, I have to go meet with 264 kids and find out where they sent it to. So can you imagine the exponential growth of where that video went? If that video gets out, what happens to those kids? What happens to that girl? How does she feel? Shame, depression.
Suicidal.
That is where we're heading with that. Suicidal. If a kid commits suicide because of that, and that's sex bullying, whoever was involved in that can be charged in that person's death. It's very important, and our kids don't know this. They need to know that. I'm telling you, they don't know it. Let's keep going. Talking to our kids about online safety, we've talked about that. Once it leaves your hands, you have no control over it. We were doing a sting operation in Tuscaloosa one night for a big, you've heard of sugar dating, sugar babies, sugar daddies. For a while, the University of Alabama was number 4 in the nation of colleges providing females to do sugar dating. It's prostitution, and it can very easily turn into trafficking. But we were doing a big sting operation down there one night, specifically targeting sugaring. The first girl that comes in, sweet girl, and we're talking, and she was so hardened. She's like, she was a senior criminal justice major, getting ready to go to grad school there, and she'd been doing this for 4 years. And she said, nothing I said fazed her. I told her the average lifespan. The average lifespan, because since I didn't tell y'all yet, for someone who's in this life is between 6 and 10 years from the very first time that their body is sold, whether they're doing it on their own or somebody else isn't making them do it. 6 to 10 years. So we have children that are being trafficked at 10, 12, younger, older. There's a timeline. We've got to get them out. So anyway, this girl, we were talking about it, and I told her that didn't faze her. I showed her pictures of beating up people and talked to her about the death rate. That the top 3 reasons people die in this life: suicide, overdose, and murder. And murders that look like an overdose. Anyway, I told her all this stuff, and it didn't faze her. And I said, at one point, I talked with her for about an hour and a half, and then at one point she dropped her facade and she said, "Can I ask you something?" When I was growing up in the Montgomery Prattville area, there was a guy, and we did a lot of videos and pictures and stuff like that. And we used to sell them to make money. Can you get those off the internet? What did I say? No. We can work on it. We can try to track it. We can try to find them if you know what those are. If you have them, we can try to flag them online. But they're gone. Once they leave your phone, they're gone. Let's go to the next slide. So it's important we talk to them about that. Talk to them about peer pressure that they get to send kind of pictures and things like that. Tell an adult that you trust what's happened. And then those adults need to be trained on what to do. First time a kid came up and disclosed something to me, if I hadn't been told exactly what to do for a minor, you must have law enforcement, DHR, and victim services have to be brought into it too, and usually medical services as well. If I didn't know that, I wouldn't have known what to do when that girl came up and disclosed that to me. So it's very important that we tell them that this is not your fault. You are not in trouble. It's okay. We can help you. It's very important that they get that reassurance from an adult that they trust.
Question. And then do you?
Let's save the questions to the end, okay? But please remember it. So if someone sends you an inappropriate request online, the steps that you can take: do not meet them in public. Tell an adult or friend. Just tell somebody. We want our kids to come to us. We expect them to make mistakes. God didn't give them to us perfect. We know they're going to make mistakes. They're going to lie. Okay, I expect you to lie, but I need you to come back to me so that I can help you. I'm not here to be mean. I'm here to help you. So we have to tell our kids that. Let's go on to the next slide so we can pass on through.
Oh, did it change?
You're good.
Okay.
Hold.
I couldn't tell. It changed.
So when we're messaging adults, we have to make a resolution to do something. Watch for warning signs everywhere. Be vigilant about your children's social media and that kind of stuff. Let's go on to the next slide. We have to be vigilant. And here's my policy, and I'm that mean mom. Oh my gosh, I'm so mean. I won't give my kids a device. Like my daughter couldn't have a cell phone until like every single app that she puts on there has to come through me first. Like we set it up so that she cannot download any app from the App Store unless it comes to me first and I look at it. So I know everything that's on her phone. All right. So learn, act, and share. Learn about trafficking. Act on it. Talk to your kids. Talk to their schools. If you've got kids or grandkids in school, go talk to them and say, hey, are y'all talking to kids about sex trafficking? Have y'all done formal training for them? If not, the way to do that, because a lot of parents will freak out, but there's ways to do it, age appropriate. We've got presentations K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and on up. There's ways to do it, and it can be done under Aaron's Law, which is a law that says that the school must educate people, the students, about sexual harassment, unwarranted sexual contact, and things like that. So whenever you suspect or discover a child is a victim, call law enforcement. I call the Department of Homeland Security. Those are my people. That they work these crimes more than any other federal agency, and do not be scared to report it. And you also call and report it to DHR. Jefferson County DHR is fabulous. The deputy director DHR often comes with us and speaks on this. There's never been a time I haven't called him where he hadn't just gotten right on something. If you see something, say something. Let's go to the next slide. There are 3 calls that must be made. Number 1, you have to call DHR. Number 2, you have to call police department. And number 3, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline and report it. The National Human Trafficking Hotline, if you report child sex trafficking, it's going to immediately go to the Department of Homeland Security here. Usually within about 30 minutes to an hour, they will get that tip report. And remember, you all have to report it. Especially anybody that's worked with kids, you're a mandatory reporter. So under the age of 19, you have to report that child abuse.
Couple questions.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next rant. We're wrapping it up. What time are we supposed to be done here? 1?
12:30.
We said 1:30?
No, I said 12:30.
Oh, 12:30. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. You want me to answer these questions now? Optimal. This is let's scroll through this real quick. There's a vision for children. We want them to have mentoring, healthcare, education, court advocacy. There's a lot of things that we bring in to help kids when they're caught up in this kind of situation. make a resolution to do something. We talked about the trafficking free zones, get education, teach other people. All right, I think we hit it all. So now we'll go ahead and start taking questions.
No, I thought I went too.
Yeah, well, now we'll go ahead and start taking questions. I realize that this is like information superhighway, and your heads may be about to explode, and I'm sorry. That's just what we do. We explode people's heads. So I apologize about that. But if you have questions, she's going to moderate and take them on the.
So those two came from.
I have a question.
Okay.
Those two that came online from way back, if you could address those, and then we can come here. But before we speak here, you're gonna have to come to the mic, because we can't. Those in the audience can't hear you.
Okay. So this question is, how do you identify a trafficker? That's great. How do you identify a trafficked victim? It takes hours and hours and sometimes weeks to even identify, or months to identify a victim. To identify a trafficker, that's a great question. There's a lot of law enforcement tools that are used to help identify a trafficker. You're going to see, sometimes they don't look like they fit with the people that they're with. Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's that they just don't fit. Maybe the trafficker is well dressed and she's not. You can look on their social media, and there'll be a lot of pictures of them flashing a bunch of Benjis, a bunch of dollar bill signs and stuff like that. They're real proud of the fact that they're making money off selling people. Real proud of that fact. There's a lot of different things that we use to identify a trafficker. Someone who's very controlling, someone who maybe they don't have a job where they report, pay taxes and do that kind of stuff, but they're a business entrepreneur. The word entrepreneur, holy smokes, gets thrown around a lot with traffickers. Anyone you feel like is gaslighting you, or somebody that you think might be being groomed by a trafficker, there's a lot of red flags and signs on that. Why would a 1-year-old be trafficked? I assume maybe for the black market adoption type situation, which raises other issues. Yes.